So let's take a look at the business process in flowlu, and I'll share my screen.
Yeah, that's actually pretty exciting. Okay, so this is PTO request. Where did you find that?
So when I signed up for my free flowlu account, it gives me 2 weeks of all the features and also some just made up data that was populated in there to get your feet under you, I guess, while you're getting used to how to use flowlu. So I just kept it's fake data. So anything in here is not proprietary. It's just completely fake. So what we've got here, it came with one flow that was built out for a PTO request. If someone was to request some time off, they would come. This would be an internal person in the organization coming to this area and running it. And at this point, it asks, this is actually the name of, I guess this could be a flowlu PTO. It's not the person's name. It's a little strange.
Oh, it's the name of the request.
Yeah,
so
it's the name
like
of the request.
vacation time or something like that, or
what?
So is the name of the request something like vacation time, or if I was filling it out, I would say I want a vacation.
Yeah, it'd be something like that, like vacation request. Put in the employee that is looking for it. Fill in the, if you want 3 days off. I don't know if you need hours. I think you might need to fill in all of these things. It gives you a little date picker. Oh, for next week, I'll take Monday through Wednesday off and return to work on Thursday. And it's asking me for a reason for the request.
I see that.
And I'm going to say vacation. And when I save that, there's some automation that runs to push it. You can see now in this workflow here, we've got my request is sitting here. It gave it a number, a unique number. And I could go back into there and look at it. And this is tracking the whole flow. So this is the next task right here, is that I'm supposed to review the company guidelines to make sure my request is falling within company guidelines. And once I do that, I say that I've reviewed it, and now it pushes it automatically to the next step. So that's what we were working on last time, was looking at how to push things to the next step and what does it do there. Because now at manager approval, it's looking for some information. And I can open up and if I look into the settings, that'll be the automations that are set up. So this first one that we're looking at right here, we just moved the document that was collected after I clicked that I reviewed the company's policy. This is just a task for me. Then it moved my request to manager approval, at which point the manager gets, this is the template for the rule. But what we've got here, if you notice these little icons here, they help you understand what the task is. So this is a approve or deny type of request. So if you see down here that there's an approve or deny button, and it has an action associated with it. After you deny it, it would just get dropped into the denial, or if you approve it, it gets moved to the next step, HR notification. You can see the denial and approval are sitting at the end. So if it gets denied at this step, it moves it all the way to the denial and considers it complete, sends notifications. People look at their notifications like this. So because I've got it set up for me to be the person who reviews the PTO request, I get the task to approve or deny it.
What happens when you put request additional information? Do you know yet?
So that is where you could send it to somebody else. Like I could,
okay, so you would have
to just start back here, because this is I built those I built these two out a little bit just to play around with it.
Okay.
This first one is the one that came in the original workflow, and that's this one here, this task review employees PTO request. So this would go to the manager to approve it or deny it. If
Yep.
the manager denies it, it drops straight into the denial. If they approve it, it moves on to the next stage. Because I've got all these others in here, I should have deleted these out and saved
That's
it.
okay. I mean, it makes sense. You just you request additional information. The person will get a notification. They can answer it. So that's actually pretty easy. I was just curious.
Yeah. So if you do request information, that looks like you could send what information you're requesting. You're building out an email basically. And oh, this is the description. And you could display fields and make them fillable. So what does this look like in real?
Yep. Fillable fields name. Yep. I think your process in combination with my process, actually putting them together would be pretty good because I'll have custom.
That's what we want to do. This is the way to do it, because what I was playing around with in here is the, like, can you collect information? Yes. Can you, and you do it through these rules, like creating a rule,
Right.
like this is approve or reject, request information. If you're just having someone check off, like, did you read this new information? And then you have automation things here that will move the data to the next stage.
Are you scrolled all the way down to the bottom? There you go. Email. There's an email. Is there an email?
The emails, you can send an email, but it wouldn't be through this rule. You would just make it a, so if this comes through, let's see, compliance check. It comes through and it's got these variables like we were putting in earlier to the document. So this will say, ensure that the employee's PTO request complies, and later on it'll say the name of the person, or back here it'll say, please review the employees. I guess this still pulls employee. At some point it pulls the user's name. But it's through these that you could, one rule that I saw was to run a business process.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if you run a business process, you could then have a whole nother form that goes to someone in your company. This is where, if you had the technical review as a business process, we could then have that as a step here. So as a project comes in where the website is reviewed, you would then set up business process for it.
Can I interject for a second? I want to ask you a question. Let's talk about the difference between a rule and a business process, because through the automations, I guess there's one rule which is a singular step in the chain, and then it seems like a business process is a series of steps along a chain. Can you speak on that?
Yep, that's exactly it. The business process is a series of steps that you would follow. And if you look at it in the settings, these are literally steps you would follow. So if I submitted for personal time off, the first step I would get tasked with is to make sure that I read the company's policies. And once I check that off, then it moves to the next. It takes the rule of moving that data to the next step. So I could put some conditions on here, like add a condition that the time off is less than 10 days. And that could then be the first check. This is where If it's, if your policy is, it must be less than 10 days, that could be the first automatic check, and it won't move it now unless the request is under 10 days. If I save that, I've just changed it. And so you could create a rule that runs a new business process. I've just got a fake business process here, but we'll call it project review.
Okay, you got to linger here for a minute so I understand. So you're on one stage of one process. You've put in a couple of steps in these rules, but now you're saying you could create a rule to send it through a different process. So these, to me, in my mind, seem like a workflow. Like the process is just like a workflow, only these are automation templates that have been preset. So why give me a scenario where is this an if and then, like if it's less than 10 days, send it to this process. If it's more than 10 days, send it to this other process. I need to understand that a little better.
Yes, that's a simple rule. That's just checking for the number of days that's being requested. If it's greater than the limit, it will do one thing to it. If it's within the range, then it'll move it along to the next stage. We haven't told it what to do if it's outside of the range. So at this point, it would move to the next rule, and we could send it to another workflow. Maybe it needs a higher approval, or maybe it's something like that. So the next business process that it moves to, in that case, could push it to, VP or something like that, instead of just the regular manager level.
Yeah,
And
so let's go back to our 31-point inspection theory, our hypothesis, or our test, our automation test.
Mhm.
We had low priority, medium priority, high priority, and then critical situations. So if it's critical, then because what we're doing is an exercise in client nurturing and helping businesses scale to have a strategic thinking to gain a competitive edge in business. So the automation process in our scenario, just kind of building off of our other video, is the scenario of client nurturing based on these assessments. And I know we're using, time off as this just sample template that you're talking about, and then we'll flesh out an actual automation maybe for our next video, if you're willing to continue to put up with me because you're so awesome. But yeah, so follow along with that if you could, if you would indulge me on the the green, yellow, red critical.
yes.
I'm trying to wrap my head around a
Okay, so that's good.
that splits off.
Here's how I would do it. I'll start. I have unsaved changes, but okay.
I mean, maybe I'm jumping ahead. I mean, I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, but that's where I started to get into like a project review, or we can call this anything. Right now, I don't have much built out in here, but this is where let's say this is your, can I rename it right from here? I can add fields here. Let me start over again, because this could be your, what's the first one of your inspection here? Your 31-point inspection would be like usability or something. Very, and then you can pull down, let's say, a drop down. And in that drop down, it's got to be, I'll just go off with the colors that you just had: red, yellow, my ADD, and green. So I could probably knock these out. These were just collecting other information, but I guess I'll delete two of them. All right, so now this workflow that we're building out here, I mean, workflow, business process, they're synonymous to me almost. So at this point, if we run this, it's going to ask us for a project idea, and it's going to give us this pull down for red, yellow, green. So let's imagine this is comments area. I should have changed the name to say comments. So this could be the technical review of the website. Looks overall good. Usability is green. And then that form, we've just started to create data. So data is following this. It's got a number that's unique, and it says it's in the initial stage, and it's starting to track everything that's happening with that new instance of what we've got called project review here. So since we don't have much built out, we don't have much planned, but this is where it would show all the next steps that are getting planned. Once the project hits there, it gets assigned as a task to somebody to review it or to authorize it for the next steps. And it might be better to show you in the other version that's built out a little bit more. Back to the PTO request, is if you run this, it starts off with a different data collection, right? So this flow is all about getting this data to the end point of it.
Can you break something down for me?
Sure.
Who's the person that goes in, fills this out, and who clicks run? And what's the purpose of clicking run? Like, break it down in layman's terms.
So running it, I imagine this would be internal people that are on your team, and you're all using flowlu as your, as your project management software, as your CRM, as your documents. And in your culture, in the way that you run your business, you would have some business processes. So if I were an employee coming in here, I would go into the business processes and I could start a new one. If I click on that, oh, maybe I got to start a new one. Here, run. So if I run it, then I would start filling in my own information. This is how
Okay, so running it is synonymous with start the process, fill out the form, start at the beginning.
Right.
How would I attach this to a project? So if we went into a project, are there fake projects in there in your account?
Yeah, I think so.
Can we just pretend that one of those projects, we want to run a business project, a business process after the planning stage? So if you open up the workflow on one of them,
Where's the?
I think it would come up. I'm not seeing the page yet, but I think it'll come up there. Unless it's just not filled out because there's nothing there. Do you see anything on your side?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. So see how it says planning, design, prototype?
Yes.
And along the top, it says main, task, documents, finance, work structure.
Yes.
And then you have automations down the end. So let's see that. Okay, so in the design, so after planning, why not create rule there? And see if business process is in there. There you go. So in the planning, that's where we would have the assessment for the client, and then we would run that process. And there could be multiple processes, like you said, if it's critical. Within the process itself, you can create rules. So that client nurturing is kind of built into the assessment. And now my question would be, how do I get this so that it's not so confusing? Because I'm thinking big. I'm thinking like, okay, so in the assessment, if it's a form, I'm not going to do 31-point inspection. Let's break it down to like no more than 10, so it's not confusing. So if I give a score between 1 and 5 on 10 things or 5 things, and then somehow it has some type of scoring system.
Yep.
How do I figure out not to have these business processes conflicting with each other? Because I have an assessment, but then there might be other reasons to have other business processes. I feel like they might start getting
I
conflicting.
think of it like in my head, I just build it out as a workflow, and it will get confusing if you have things in conflict with each other. But if you can pass data to the next step or task or rule, and it stops there. Like if it stops there, you can have it where after the planning, it could create a rule that um, either sends the email to the person or
Yeah, like a report card sends a report card or something, or sends the assessment to the customer.
right, unless it needs approval or unless it needs like eyes on it. Like if things were rated bad, a lot of bad things, they might want a project manager or client success manager to look at it first. So you could create a rule that would separate the pathway then. And if it's sitting with a person, you could create it so that the data won't move on to the next one until that person does their task. And so inside here, it could be a set of tasks. Let's see what this one is. This looks like a notification. So this runs 7 days before the project end date. It's a weird place to put a planning.
Yeah, I guess you can tell it's a sample setup, but I mean, this is really good. I know we're probably running out of time now, and Paul, I really appreciate all of your feedback. I think this is a really good intermediary step. I think this gives a good framework for foundational thinking. I think that as far as somebody that owns a small business that wants to incorporate automation into their process, that we would give them something to really think about. As my mind is racing right now. I'm like, okay, how do I not create conflicts? And what is it that I really want to automate? So what would be your advice? I mean, the thing off the top of my head is you want to write it down. You want to say, okay, well, what are my basic steps? So first I have the contract, then we make this determination. This is the decision we want to make. Here are the outcomes. If it's a bad outcome or a good outcome, we do this. So I would suggest, just from my own personal experience, to kind of draw it out, write some notes before you really start getting in there and getting frustrated with these web processes. It's not something that you want to just not do your homework on. What's your opinion with that, or your advice to people?
My advice is to write it out first too. You have to have some idea what you're trying to do with the process itself. And the process includes inputs, outputs, and decision points usually. So and tasks that happen to the data as it passes through. I tend to draw things out into a flow chart using either mermaid diagrams, or which is a free diagramming program online, or you can even draw it out in PowerPoint. You could draw it on paper. I often draw stuff out on napkins to get it started. But when you connect things with lines, and that keeps the data structured, where if it goes from this point and it only has 2 lines, if it can only go 2 directions, it has to choose one of those ways. So I help a lot of people understand where those decision points are and where that input is, so that the automation can then start to take over and push that data around where it's supposed to be. A lot of that looks like tasks. Tasks get finished, and then the next step happens. So for people coming into it, understanding your process, and it's hard to understand your process because you do it so many times that you don't even understand where every decision point is being made. And so it helps to have somebody from the outside walking through it, if you've already got your process in place, to understand where all those inputs and decision points are.
Yeah, so if I can just put it into practical terms, we're going to go back to the auto repair. We've been saying Jiffy Lube, but an auto repair station. So if you walk in and the client states, hey, something's wrong with my car. And we talked about triggers where they've given, they walk in the door, that's a trigger to assess what the problem is. And so if you've got two options, the first option is they might need an oil change. The second option is they've got a problem with their tires. So in that event, if the outcome is oil, it goes down a pathway that takes that car into the shop, and people know how to change the oil. You go through those steps or those tasks to complete that project. If it's a tire problem, it goes to a different department down a different chain of tasks, a different process in order to complete that project. So that's just my attempt to try to put it into practical terms. But I think wrapping up here, I'd like to be able to do end-to-end, record a process. I'm going to do my best to create some forms and create a business process that I will actually be able to use, and then document it. So I'm really excited about that. Are you willing to help me out with that too?
Love to help you out with that.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah. So Paul, I would love to just, anybody that has any questions or needs any automation or wants to understand what their AI readiness is, Paul is definitely the guy to talk to. And I'm just really blessed to be able to say that you're a colleague of mine and the amount of information that you've been helping me. And our goal is to do it within the software without relying on tech people. We're doing this from a programless point of view. And I am not a programmer. As you can see, I have a little bit of experience, but it's just enough to really get me in trouble. Usually I call people like Paul and ask them to help me out. So this has just been really, really great. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. And
very welcome.
Hit them up if you guys have any questions. I'm sure that there's a lot of questions out there. Just let us know in the comments. We'll be sure to answer them in the next round.
Thanks, Christy. It's been a pleasure talking with you again. And I love where we're going with this, because I truly believe with the technology we have, we can transform the way that we work.
Absolutely. We're going to do it together. Thank you.
See you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.